Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of the KPC podcast. I'm Karsan Turner.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
Today we have a lot to talk about. We have a very, I would say we're going to be touching up on a lot of controversial subjects, so it's going to be quite the spicy episode. I almost said explosive, but that's not appropriate for the first story we're going to be talking about. So, anyone sleeping under a rock should know that, a lot of prominent Democratic figures have been receiving what appears to be pipe bombs in their mailboxes. This started on Monday with George Soros, and then it grew to people like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Brennan, and I know, what's his name, Cory Booker received one earlier this morning. James Clapper, Joe Biden, Robert De Niro, Maxine Waters, and the first wave that kind of happened at the beginning of the week were not fake, but they were skeptical. Bomb experts looked at them. They said
some of them had flaws in the making, so they were not likely to explode. But
that, and they also said they looked like they were made from as a prop for a movie.
Okay.
For some type of political ploy, which, and I'm speaking in terms of the first wave. I think that does make sense because there were some allegations coming out where there was the Larry the Cable Guy ISIS flag. Did you hear about that? So there was an ISIS flag taped to one of those bombs, but it was actually, it looked like an ISIS flag, but it said get her done on it. And I tried searching for one of those. I'm not going to buy one, but they didn't exist until this story broke out, which was kind of weird. And you can't buy them. They don't. The only ones that do exist are his slogan in front of a Confederate flag, not an ISIS flag.
Interesting.
So, but it kind of made me wonder, if the bomb was supposed to go off, why bother decorating the flag or decorating the bomb? And then another bomb allegedly had a flash drive in it with videos of Gavin McInnes's group, like the Proud Boys, engaging in violent activity. But again, why include that if the bomb was intended to go off? Some of the bombs later this week were much more dangerous, and Trump commented on this. He was doing a meeting, not a meeting.
Press release.
Yeah, a press release thing for the African American conservative movement. I know it was hosted by Turning Point USA, and spoke out about how there's an investigation underway, and they found a suspect. His name is Cesar Ramos.
Sayoc. Sayyoc, I think.
Something like that. Yeah. We do have a picture of the alleged suspect, but I think this has caused a lot of controversy recently. What are some of your first impressions on what's happening?
It's kind of madness. This is what I thought of when we were covering this on Wednesday was, I don't know what year it was, but when there was someone that was sending bombs in the mail, and that was a huge FBI thing. It's so similar to that, but these aren't exploding. One thing that was interesting to me is that the article that I read brought up how a second one was delivered to CNN, and then so let me see here. So Clapper, what is his name? James Clapper, who was the former director of of national intelligence, he had one sent to him, and he said that what President Trump has been saying, he doesn't think that he's he's not suggesting a direct cause and effect relationship between what President Trump has said and done and the sending of the packages. But when I thought about how CNN has gotten two, if they had all been going to media, I think that would have been an interesting take, because everyone, the media is always saying, what Trump is saying about constantly fake news and how he's always going after the media, maybe that has an effect. But since it just went to only one, I don't know if that is it, but that could have been interesting.
And to kind of turn that around, because it really does go both ways. Media says, Trump is radicalizing people against us. Trump says the opposite. And, last month, someone sent ricin to Ted Cruz's office. They also sent ricin to the Pentagon and to the White House. So it's really been happening on both sides, and a lot of
there's radicals on both sides,
absolutely.
And people just forget about that.
There's the fringe left. Well, now they're a domestic terrorist organization, Antifa. They will go to a lot of the GOP offices and throw rocks at them, destroying them. So it really shows how both sides have kind of pushed to the extremes, especially gearing up for this midterm election. And it sucks that we can't just sit and hash out ideas anymore. Both sides are pushed so far to the left. And even some of the people who received these bomb threats, they were using some very distasteful language about Trump and even Republicans, weeks leading up to it. So, for example, George Soros, there are ties to him funding Antifa, the domestic terrorist organization. Hillary Clinton, a couple weeks ago, said, you cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. And like Maxine Waters, I know over the summer she was saying, like, if you see someone from the Trump cabinet, you need to push them. Like, you need to go in and, like, cause a scene. Like, you have to confront them. You can't let them eat in these restaurants, which is, not a good thing you want to say. And
but no matter what they said, I mean, they don't deserve to have a bomb sent to them.
No, absolutely not. But that's just more to show that it's not like
the political climate,
the victim and the oppressor. It's both of them are being victimized. Both of them are oppressing. And
I think Trump actually, I mean, we had the TVs on in here, but I think how he responded was actually, he did a good job saying, I was actually kind of surprised that he had said, political terrorism has no place in our country, which is, I agree with 100%. Right. It doesn't, but I mean, it's getting there. I mean, we are accelerating like full force towards that in domestic terrorism. But I think he had a good comment on it, and I was surprised. But
and it's still a developing story. I wouldn't be surprised if more outrageous events start happening leading up to the election. And we'll just have to see. I mean, we'll have comments on that next Friday. Hopefully nothing else has happened, but I mean, we both know that's
well, I'm sure we'll have more on the background of this guy. I know that the article I read, it said that he did have a criminal background, but it didn't specify what or why. So we'll probably have more on that on Wednesday as the story unfolds. But moving on to our next story, some of you have probably heard about the firing of Megyn Kelly, and I don't really know where I stand on it yet. I don't agree with her comments. She shouldn't have said them, obviously, but I don't know if she should have been fired. I like Megyn Kelly. I think that she does a great job of standing up for women, and I think she's kind of like, I really like Jake Tapper, and I think that him and her do a good job of kind of balancing on both sides, and that's why I like them. But she made a comment. We have a clip of that, which I will pull up now. We can show that.
Kelly's views about blackface have sparked outrage.
What is racist? Because truly, you do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface for Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Like, back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up as like a character.
Even defending the costume of this reality star.
She made her skin look darker than it really is, and people said that was racist. And I don't know, I thought, like, who doesn't love Diana Ross?
Kelly made a tearful apology.
I defended the idea, saying as long as it was respectful and part of a Halloween costume, it seemed okay. Well, I was wrong, and I am sorry.
That is her going into her apology. So her Today show at 9 a.m. is canceled after receiving a lot of backlash for it. And her latest episodes were pre-recorded tapes. But yeah, what is your take on that? Because I like we were saying, I don't know if her show should have gotten canceled necessarily, but is an apology okay for this? Just an apology. What do we think?
I don't know. I've kind of learned that apologies don't mean anything in this day and age. I feel like you should just not really apologize, but give context to what you were saying.
Yeah, and show that you're going to change from now on, because I feel like a lot of the times that when reporters or people like Megyn Kelly make comments like that and then they get caught and they get backlash for it, then they apologize because they are in the wrong and they realize that. But if no one would have said anything about this comment, she wouldn't go on TV the next day and say, I shouldn't have made that comment, I don't think. So.
And I believe that she shouldn't have been fired. I'm not really a Megyn Kelly fan at all, but I definitely don't think she deserved to lose her job over this. She said something that was distasteful. I don't agree with it, and a lot of people don't agree with it as well. But how are you supposed to come to conclusions and make decisions if you don't have somebody who's kind of throwing out these ideas that don't stick? That's how you find good ideas. You look at everything that doesn't work, and eventually you find something that does work. And I think she was just thinking out loud, and it's kind of dangerous to be in a time where thinking out loud can get you in trouble. And I'm surprised that they fired her so quickly. I feel like they should have learned from ABC, because that's what they did with Roseanne. She had one tweet that was out of line. They fired her within minutes. And then, which Roseanne was the reboot was the number one sitcom. the Connors had, I was looking at numbers, I think it was 33% less viewers. And then the second episode had a 25% drop in viewers. So no one's watching the new rebooted show. ABC has publicly said they regret firing her. And I feel like they shouldn't have just instantly fired Kelly.
I don't think so either.
She wasn't saying, you know, hey, I like blackface, which do not take that quote out of context. I was making an example. But she was just thinking out loud, trying to see the other side. And now for simply doing that, looking at the other side, she got fired for it. Even though she's going to be retiring with what, $64 million?
I think it was $64 million. Yeah.
She still is most likely going to be out of work, and that.
Yeah, and the article that I have said that NBC News said that earlier in the month, Megyn Kelly wanted to kind of go back to covering political stuff, and so she wanted a different show. So maybe after this, maybe she'll get somewhere with more politics, but I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about this, because when I first saw the video, I was surprised that she said that, but I think her apology, like I said, I don't think apologies really are, as you said too, meaningful. But I don't think she should have gotten fired. I think that they could have maybe released her for a little bit, see if people are reacting to her apology well, if she actually means her apology, if she's going to be different about how she handles things like that, and then bring her back on, rather than just completely releasing her.
And when I criticize apologies, I don't mean that apologizing is bad, because sometimes they don't mean it. Of course, when you do something and then you lose something, you do mean it. But again, I think there was a couple months ago, video was released of the Parkland shooter who was in the jail cell talking to his brother, and he said he was sorry for what he did. You know, everyone's always sorry when they do something, but the things you need to look at is what they did to, you know, cause the blowback they received, and then what they do moving forward. But not for Megyn Kelly. She has received the axe. Speaking of, I don't really have a smooth segue.
I don't know how you're gonna do that.
We are going to talk about the caravan that is apparently headed towards the United States. And so this started on Sunday. There was apparently 4,000 migrants from Honduras who were headed up to the United States, which it's not really how that works. You can't just say you like a country and then go to that country and expect them to let you in. And a lot of the mainstream media outlets were criticizing people, saying we're not going to let them in when they get here because they're entering the country illegally. So Anderson Cooper made this huge point saying there is no evidence that they are terrorists. There's no evidence that they're going to be criminals. And it's the problem is not that they're criminals. The problem is, if you're going to a country, especially with immigration, if you look at the immigration policies for Japan, you can't just say, hey, I watch a lot of anime. Can I go to Japan? They're not going to let you in. You have to be fluent in the language, and you have to have a job instantly lined up for them to even consider taking you into a country. And that's almost every single country. But we're one of the only countries that basically lets anyone in because we don't follow our proper border policies. And that's where you see a lot of, disproportionate crime rates among immigrants. For example, with the murder of Molly Tibbetts. I know there was a DACA student not too long ago who was caught with an insane amount of meth or cocaine or something like that. And I have some, actually do have some numbers. These are taken from anytime someone has any questions about immigration or they want to know more about it, I would definitely recommend them to read Ann Coulter's Adios America book, because it really digs deep into the topic and looks at all the reasons why enforcing border control is a good idea, because every other country does it. So whenever they look at, for example, the poverty rate amongst many immigrants, so immigrants from 19 of the top 25 source countries entering the U.S. are more likely to be in poverty than native white Americans, not Native American Indians. Generally far more likely. 7 immigrants from Mexico and Honduras, which is the country where they're coming from, for example, have a poverty rate that's 3 times higher than for the United States. So it's kind of hard for them to come here and contribute to our economy if they don't have a job lined up. And I'm not saying that it's not sad, because it is sad, but it's not our responsibility to just take them in. And what makes me think it's kind of not a political tactic, but like, I don't think the Democrats funded this or anything like that, but I find it weird that they're not stopping in, like, Mexico seeking asylum. A lot of them eventually did end up doing that, and many Hondurans are actually going back home because Trump responded saying we're going to, protect the border and make sure that no people enter this country illegally. But I was also looking at an event that happened in May with Israel and the Pakistanis. They were enforcing their border, and they were killing people who were within range of their border. They killed 58 Pakistani protesters. And I just find it weird how that story kind of went under the radar. But for us, we're looked at as bad people because we're not going to, provide temporary housing for people who will illegally enter the U.S. And even the Trump administration has said we have no plans on, killing anybody. We're not going to use violent force, but we are going to make sure that people aren't entering this country illegally. But I don't know. What have you thought about the whole caravan situation?
I think that, well, I wish I would have had the article that I read on this, but it said that people think that this caravan is going to like impact the midterms, but they won't actually get to like the border until like days after, because it's like a crazy amount of mileage to walk. But I think that, I mean, realistically, a huge group of people, whoever makes it, granted, I mean, the circumstances that they're going through to get to the U.S. border, I don't think that they're going to get there, and I don't think they're just going to like walk in. With such a huge group, I know that there's like different ways to get in and like to like get in without anyone seeing you, but I don't think like if they all do come to the border, I don't think that they're all going to get into our country. And I don't know, I have a really open idea on immigration just because my mom, I think I brought this up before, but my mom used to teach night classes to immigrants that were learning English as a second language. So they could speak English, but it was like grammar and things like that. And sometimes I would go to her classes, and like, I mean, these people would have owned their own business in like Russia or something, and they would come here and be painters because like it took forever for them to get like a legal status, and just like seeing firsthand through them how hard it was for them to get in the country when they had a nurse, is like they were a nurse, and like they had this great job in their country, and then they come here, and these people I feel like should be able to work in our country and come over, but it's not that simple. And I feel like a lot of people have misinterpretations about how like they think, why don't you just apply for citizenship? Like, it is so hard and it's so expensive, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So the reason why they're coming to the US is because they think that they're going to have a better life. And yeah, a lot of them do live in poverty, and maybe they don't realize that until they get here. I'm not sure, but I just get frustrated when people talk about it, because I think that, like I said, there's just so many misinterpretations, and seeing it and like talking to those people about how difficult it was. And like, I mean, I remember my mom came home one night and she said that one of her Mexican students was talking about how like the cartel had like cut off people's heads like right outside on the beach where she had lived, and like she took her kid like away from her abusive husband, and they fled to the border because obviously they want to get away from that. And so I don't know, that's why I have such like an open idea. I mean, I know that it can be easy to say like, because like Mexico does have a lot of crime, obviously because of the cartel, that these people are all going to be in like doing crime and stuff. But I just don't see it like that. I think that a lot of the people that come here are going to be okay, and that they really are just coming here because they do want a better life.
Well,
but
a couple of things to kind of respond to that. So like the type of immigration reform that the Trump administration would support. So like you mentioned, some of those people, they own businesses, they're nurses, they have jobs, they are successful in their country, and then they come to the United States. Those are the type of immigrants that we should be taking in. People who have contributed to their own country, but they want a different life, so they want to contribute to, the United States. Right. And one of the things like with the cartels, the reason they're so active like in Mexico and along the border is because our border is so open. They are allowed to do their business in between Mexico and the United States. That's a lot of clients, and that also creates a lot of human trafficking problems. Right. So I think enforcing border control, because I mean all Trump has done is really tweet and say we're going to protect our border for this. And there's an article according to Vox, which you're not going to hear me say that sentence ever again. I'll have to log
Well,
into
I can.
my
Yeah. Well,
Evernote.
I can touch on this. I think that I do believe that we should, have a strict border policy, but I think the problem is within our actual policy and getting people that want to come to the U.S. into the U.S. Like, we need to change the way that we handle applications, because I'm sure that there's so many of them that we can't get through very fast. The amount of money that people have to pay is just insane. I don't know what the amount is, but I remember talking to them about it, and it's like they don't have the money to pay. And so that's the root problem. I think that's why so many people are coming in illegally, because one, they can't pay for the application, or two, it's like a dire need to get out of their country, and the process to get citizenship is like years long. So if we can fix that somehow, I think that we will have less illegal immigrants coming through our country.
And the process, it is very similar in a lot of other countries. I think Germany, you have to be working there, Germany and Japan, you have to be working there for over 10 years before you can even apply for citizenship. So you're like surveilled on a green card program.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, how would they, because they're
so-
basically citizens if they're living there for 10 years.
No, it's like any mishaps you have, you're out.
Okay.
But I do agree. I think there should be a lot of immigration reform, but it really does need to come from not just the U.S. but Mexico. They need to step in. And from what I've heard, and I'm not too well versed in the politics in Mexico. I think their current president may or may not have not ties to the cartel, but he doesn't really care about it. It's not a huge issue to him because it gives them money in an indirect way, so they don't really focus on it. So I think it's a lot of the corruption in the other countries. If they were able to fix that, that would be able to decrease the crime rate a lot. And I do think that new trade agreement with the United States, Mexico, and Canada, with some of those revisions, maybe that will be an opportunity for the U.S. and Mexico to actually start working together and fix the problem, because it doesn't just affect the people who come into the country illegally. It doesn't just affect our people, but it affects their own citizens. I mean, their own citizens are the cartel members, and they're hurting their own citizens. That's a huge problem. And we could probably talk about immigration for the next 17 hours, but we will move on. But
let's talk about Google.
Yes.
Right? So this headline popped up on my phone, and I thought that it was very interesting. I remember when I saw the headline, because so I should probably explain the story first. So Google's the founder of Android that worked for Google had sexual misconduct in 2013, and so in 2014 Google released him, and they gave him a $90 million exit package. So that number was in the headline, and I remember seeing it pop up on my phone, and I was like, oh my goodness, that is a lot of money for someone that had credible claims of sexual misconduct, which the New York Times did a great story on it, because they actually, which I really like, they included a comment from Mr. Rubin. His full name is Andy Rubin, and he basically said that after the New York Times released the first article about it, he said that there's inaccuracies and exaggerations about the compensation, and then he also said that he never coerced a woman to have sex in a hotel room. These false allegations are part of a smear campaign by my ex-wife to disparage me from me during a divorce and custody battle. So I have never heard of this guy, which I've never had an Android. Maybe that's why.
I've had one and they suck. They're terrible.
But
they're great if you want every app on your phone to not work.
Oh, yeah, perfect. But so a woman said that Andy Rubin coerced her into performing oral sex in a hotel room in 2013, and two company executives said that was true, and Google investigated these claims and found that her claims were credible. So they basically just asked him for his resignation. Instead, they handed him the $90 million. And so the installments are going to be $2 million a month for 4 years, and the next payment is scheduled for next month. So I don't know if something will happen with this and he won't get his money. We will see. But one of the things that I kind of want to talk about this story is I had already mentioned to you the fact that the Google's vice president of people operations and their chief executive said that wrote to the New York Times that the company has fired 48 people in the last 2 years just because of sexual harassment, but none of them have received an exit package. So what do we think about the number? I think it's a crazy number for the last 2 years, and we haven't heard about anything on that. And also, why does this guy get such a huge package?
Yeah, I know that. It's interesting how big tech companies have become so large. They're almost more powerful than not only our FBI in terms of investigating alleged or credible sexual assaults that happen, but also just choosing not to do anything about it.
Right.
I think, honestly, I don't know how I feel about big tech in general, because I mean, I think this is a clear indication, along with a bunch of other stuff that like Google has done, because Google owns YouTube. They censor a lot of people who they disagree with,
Right.
and these are people who rely on the service to make money. It's their job, it's their occupation. But if Google doesn't like them, they will just kick them out.
Right.
And I think it just shows that the power that they have is pretty terrifying. If they're able to look at sexual assaults that happen and then just kind of turn the other cheek, bless you,
That's coming.
then I don't know. I feel like something needs to kind of be done about that.
Yeah, and the thing that baffles me is that Google said that these were credible. Like, they found her allegations credible, and then they still gave him all this money. So I don't know if that was in like some contract they had with him. That wasn't mentioned, but I don't know. I mean, if you think that her claims are credible, why would you be handing him $90 million?
I think they have interests that are above people, and they don't really care what happens. I mean, citizens to them are just kind of, pawns in their grand scheme of whatever's going to happen. If a woman gets sexually assaulted, who cares? If we're firing people, if they are no longer allowed to make money or have a platform where they can express their opinions, who cares? Because neither of those things have anything to do with their agenda. So whatever happens to them happens, And I think that's a very dangerous thing to do.
And
for
maybe with this, they find out that happens, and so they say, we're going to give you this money if you leave quietly, if you don't say anything. And so they think that that's just going to be the end of the story. But then people find out about the money, and I think that's when the story happens. So maybe they didn't, they weren't like, oh yeah, you did this, so here's your money and leave. I think maybe they give him the money so he like doesn't say anything, or like, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? They don't seem very objective, which, speaking of people who don't seem very objective, I was really struggling for a third story to find this day, or for today's podcast, and I was leaving the campus last night, and I was like, man, I just wish a story would just jump out in front of me. And I find this paper of the UDK, University Daily Kansan, very objective news source. They don't subscribe to any political biases, not at all, no way, folks. But so I see the front page. They put an editorial on the front page, which is a weird decision. Less than 2 weeks before the midterm election, it says maybe they want to give an objective look at all the different candidates running for Kansas.
And their different stances.
Absolutely, in an objective way that definitely is not skewed. So they titled it Editorial, Kelly, Davis, the only choices in a pivotal election. Whoa, hey, who fact-checked that? Did Politico say that? Where's the source?
It is an editorial. However, it's on the first page instead of their usual opinion section, which is I think the second or third page.
Yeah, it's more towards the back. I mean, the rest of it is towards the back, but the problem isn't that they have a political bias. Fine, whatever. I feel like as long as a news company admits to their political bias, that's what they should be doing. The problem is when a lot of organizations claim that they don't have a bias, and then they kind of sneak it in here. But this one, it's just hidden in plain sight. Why would you put an editorial on the front page that's not, different political figures analyze the candidate? Why not have both sides look at both candidates? Because, 50% of the country is Republican, 50% is Democrat. Might be different at the University of Kansas, but that doesn't mean you get to disregard the other side, which they don't do. They just completely demonize the other side. So I do have a couple of quotes that I wanted to pull from here and kind of talk about, because this was just absolutely insane. But before I do that, I do want to read their mission statement that they have online. You can read this. It says, the Kansan staff practices high ethical standards, good news judgment, objectivity, and creativity. That's the first thing they express. So keep that in mind when we're reading through this. So starts off with, Your vote in the 2018 election is the most important vote you will cast in your lifetime. For this reason, the Kansan Editorial Board is breaking from established protocol. So I guess that would say established protocol would be like good news judgment, objectivity, and high ethical standards, and endorsing candidates in 2 vital races. Fine, no problem there. And then so they talk about...
So they say that the UDK is endorsing these candidates in this.
Right,
okay.
right. But it could just be the editorial board, the authors of the editorial board, not every single. But I think we know where every reporter would politically align. So it talks about it affects the university because tuition at the university rose over 25% since 2003. Democrat Laura Kelly is the only candidate who will set Kansas on a stable path forward, which is incredibly subjective. But anyways, Kelly is a common sense candidate. Her policies are fairly centrist, which is why she is a Democrat and not an independent. And as a state senator for over 13 years, she developed a reputation for her willingness to work with her Republican counterparts. Her Republican opponent, Chris Kobach, is the exact opposite. He is a radical Republican. Kobach would further lay waste to the state's integrity and resources. And then it says that he's a master manipulator and the leading suppressor of voting rights in the country. Kobach has for years made it clear that he has no interest in advancing anything other than his own personal and political agenda, which, like, welcome to every single political candidate in the history of forever. What? A political candidate wants to implement policies based on their own ideas? Wow. I've never heard that before. So... yeah, I don't know. I think there are just so many problems with this. What do you think?
Yeah,
what did you think when you saw this?
I kind of laughed because I just don't think that an editorial belongs on the first page.
Right before the midterms, when a lot of
right.
students, because it does say at the end, too, that a lot of students, they're the lowest voter turnout rate. So this is an attempt not only to just get them to go out and vote. They say
vote for
it's
Kelly.
important to vote, but let me quickly tell you why the Democrats are right and the Republicans are literally Hitler.
And I think to have the editorial in the opinion section is perfectly fine. But the problem with this is that a lot of people don't even pick up the UDK, but it's all over campus, so they're going to see the headline for it. And I think, I don't know, that's just not a way that a school newspaper should handle itself. But last year, when I was actually writing for the UDK, I met with Laura Kelly because I had to cover. She came to KU and she spoke and to, I think it was like Young Democrats, and so that was one of the things that I had to cover. And so I just think it's interesting that now she had come, and I don't think that we had a Republican candidate, now that I think of, come to KU and speak, or if they did, we didn't cover it. But I was there. I was there when Laura Kelly came. So. And
one of the things they hit home with is that, like Kobach, he has no intention on, increasing spending on higher education or K through 12 education. But one of the things that he has hit home on, which he said he wants to end a lot of the immigration policies here. They don't want DACA students, ending illegal immigrant students from being at KU, which he wanted to use the money that would be saved from that to put more towards the university itself. So for teachers' salaries and maybe you'll sit in a classroom lecture that doesn't have a desk that's the size of this newspaper, things like that. Which again, both candidates, I'm not saying that they're going to fulfill their promises 100%, but he's not saying...
Most don't.
Right, most of them don't. And he's not saying oh, yeah, I want to, give no money to schools because I hate schools. But I think also the university, since it's a private company, but they do receive public funding through taxpayer dollars, I think they receive a lot of money that they could be putting in other places. I mean, why were they able to, file a non-disclosure agreement with a teacher or for a student who was sexually assaulted by a teacher? That's $200,000. That's a lot of money that could go to improving classrooms. Or I know that a lot of the people who work higher up at KU, they can afford private jets and stuff. And I've also heard that TAs don't get paid. And it's maybe they can think of some ways to use their money that would help everybody.
I thought TAs get paid.
I think their school is paid for, but they don't receive
a
check.
Okay, wait, no, I think they can either have it go to their tuition or they can get a check. They get to choose, I think. Could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
But Laura, one thing about Laura Kelly that when spoke to her. I got there early, so there weren't a lot of people there. And I think that she's kind of moderate, because she reacted to me and our camera person as like, oh, the media. Like, she said that, and she was like, well, like, are you going to paint me? Like, she was like kind of standoffish to us, and like kind of like how Trump could be, but not as extreme. And she did mention some things that I thought were good, but this is kind of going off of how that's on the front page. But I don't know. I haven't heard much of her, really. I kind of forgot that she was running, other than like seeing some signs. But long story short, probably shouldn't have been on the first page.
She's not like the Hillary Clinton of Kansas or anything. Like the part about her being, more of a moderate candidate, like that much is true.
Yeah.
She's not radical in any way. But I just think the way that like the UDK handled this was almost kind of radical, and it's just kind of weird too. Some of the other stories they choose to cover, someone will, I think they found like a Pepe the Frog flag in an obscure place in Budick Hall. Someone tried to rip it up, and you could barely tell it was the flag. But someone from the UDK took a picture of it, and I think it was front page saying, white nationalism is on the rise at KU. But, people will write on the sidewalk, a vote for Republican is a vote for white supremacy. No KKK, Chris Kobach, Kansas. No stories, no coverage on that. But, you find one flag in Budick Hall, and it's like, Nazis are back. First stop, University of Kansas. And it's like, wait, what? Where is the equal coverage on both of these? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think this is a clear indication of some media bias, and maybe it's just because the midterms, there's so much heat to them. Mm-hmm. They're making decisions that
maybe they want to take a stance now. I don't really know. But
yeah, if they say moving on, we have a political opinion that we integrate into a lot of our stories. If they were open about that, I would not care. It'd be no problem.
Yeah. And I don't think that when they thought this one through, I really don't think that they were like, well, we could lose readers, because I mean, when I worked on the staff, it was pretty clear that almost everyone there was a Democrat. I think most of the readers are Democrats, so I don't know if that's just because they know that who their readers are will enjoy that or what. But
yeah, I mean, I think this is it's just one of the examples of just kind of I don't want to say the hive mind. I don't mean it in a negative way, but overwhelmingly liberal students, staff are at the University of Kansas. But one of the problems is it's hard for you to remain focused on what's true, what the objective is. If you don't have someone on the other side going, well, wait a minute, if you run something like this, isn't that kind of biased? And they go, oh, you're right, I need to fix this up a little bit. But I think that's all the stories that we have.
Yep.
And
we all have more on the package bombs on Wednesday in our newscast, probably more on the background of the suspect. But other than that, I think that's all we have.
That is all we have. And God, why can't I think of an outro? Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will see you on Wednesday with KPC News.